Good afternoon. My name is Dion Moses, and I serve as the Director of Programs and Partnerships at Afro Charities. Welcome to our spring edition of Rereading the News, where we feature old headlines from the Afro archives with new perspectives. As we approach Mother's Day, we wanted to honor one of the most iconic mothers from Baltimore, Dr. Lillie Carroll Jackson, affectionately known as Ma Jackson, Little David, and the mother of the Civil Rights Movement. If you don't know much about her, that's fine. You're about to find out. Today's program is brought to you by the Afro-American newspaper and streamed live through StreamYard across 4 different social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please note that live closed captioning is available on the Afro's Facebook and YouTube pages. All of our organizations care deeply about accessibility and want to ensure this program is accessible to everyone. A few housekeeping notes before I welcome our amazing panelists to the stage. This program is interactive. If you have comments or questions, we want to hear from you. Please drop them in the chat and we'll share them with the viewers and address your questions at the end of the program. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our esteemed panelists to the screen. First up, the dynamic Savannah Wood, Executive Director of Afro Charities. Hey, Savannah, how are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, of course, as always. Next up, we have Dr. Iris Barnes, Associate Director of the Lillie Carroll Jackson Civil Rights Museum. Welcome, Dr. Barnes. It is such an honor.
Everyone.
Welcome. And last but not least, we want to welcome Lisa Mitchell-Sinar, great-granddaughter of Dr. Lillie Mae Carroll Jackson. Good afternoon, Lisa. We're honored to have you.
Good afternoon, ladies. It's an honor to be here.
I'd also like to acknowledge Kathleen Mitchell and other members of the Jackson and Mitchell families who are watching online. I'd also like to acknowledge you, our online audience. You could have been anywhere else during lunchtime, but you chose to be here with us, and we really and truly appreciate you. Now let's get into it. I'd like to start off by having Savannah and Dr. Barnes tell us a little bit about your organizations. Savannah, can you please let us know more about the Afro newspaper as well as Afro Charities?
Thank you, Dion. I'm happy to. So the Afro-American Newspaper Company was founded in 1892 in Baltimore, Maryland. And my family, that's pictured there on the left, have been involved in the newspaper since the very beginning, but have owned it since 1897. So my great-great-grandparents are seated in the middle, John H. Murphy and Martha Elizabeth Howard Murphy with their children. Next to that, you see an image of the Afro building in Baltimore. And next to that, Joseph Goldman, who was one of the pressmen with the Afro. So in that building, all of the production of the newspaper would happen right there in Baltimore, employing hundreds, thousands of people. And the paper persists to this day. So in August, the Afro-American Newspaper Company will celebrate 133 years in production, which is huge. So be sure to subscribe to the Afro if you're not subscribed already. This is our legacy Black press, and you'll learn more about how the Black press has been so influential in social movements for literally centuries at this point. I run Afro Charities, which is a nonprofit partner to the Afro-American Newspapers Company, and we're charged with caring for the Afro's archives, which document that full 133-year history and even more than that. And we do that, we hold these collections that include approximately 3 million photographs, thousands of letters, audio recordings, reporters' notebooks, all kinds of materials that you'll see on screen in this presentation that Dion has put together for us that document world history through Black perspectives. And that's for the past century plus. So it's a really unique perspective on history and specifically world history. So it's not just focused on Baltimore. And Afro Charities cares for these collections and brings them to life through programs like this one. So Dion has been doing an amazing job of finding ways to highlight the collections through conversations like this, through workshops where we teach people how to access the archives, both in person and remotely, and through artistic engagements with young people, through our partnership with Muse 360 on their New Generation Scholars Young Artist Archival Fellowship, as well as our biannual artist commissioning project, which is ongoing right now. So we're doing a lot to bring these archives to the public. And one of our biggest projects to do that is the redevelopment of Baltimore's historic Upton Mansion, which is located in Old West Baltimore, and that will become the public research center for these archives. So that'll be the first time that people will have true public access to this really rich collection of world history told through Black perspectives. And that'll be open the end of next year. So we have a lot to look forward to.
Right. I cannot wait. I couldn't have said that overview better myself. Dr. Barnes.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here to represent the Lily Carroll Jackson Civil Rights Museum, which is an off-site unit of Morgan State University. We are located at 1320 Utah Place. Yes, that what looks like a little row home on the right there, but when you get inside, it opens up, and we have 2 period rooms. We have an orientation room, where it's also kind of a multi-purpose room where you can come and have events there, where we have most of our events. And we have 2 additional floors, so 6 galleries throughout the whole building, where we look at Lily Carroll Jackson's work as the president of the Baltimore NAACP for 35 years, and her family's work, and her allies. And so it has a big story to tell, because Baltimore was a leader in the civil rights movement, starting long before we start talking about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, although they're part of the story. But our story starts in the 1930s. And we even go back looking at who inspired Mrs. Jackson and some of her allies. So we invite you to come, because it's not just a restored row home. We also modernized it. As you can see in the image on the left, we have interactive kiosk, and we feature hybrid programming, which we'll talk about a little later with our book club. And so that's a sample of one of the galleries. We can see what it looks like with large images. We have artifacts, images, and it's just an exciting place to come. We're growing. We couldn't do it without our team. And we invite you to come. We are open 3 days a week, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 11 to 3. So keep watching on our programming list as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Barnes. Yeah, definitely. If you have not checked out that museum after this program, head on over there and check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. It's a beautiful space. But we don't want to give it all away, Dr. Barnes, because we're going to talk about that. It's coming right up. From 1941 to 1957, the Afro-American newspaper held a contest, and it was called the Ideal Mother Contest. The paper would run ads at all their editions leading up to Mother's Day. And they were calling for the public to nominate women, outstanding women who stood out in their communities. Some women had multiple children and yet took care of others in their neighborhoods, where others did other amazing things like champion civil rights in their communities. In 1957, Dr. Lily Carroll Jackson won this award. You can see it right there on the screen. One thing I didn't mention is that all of these images come from either the Afro-American Newspaper Archives or the Lily Carroll Jackson Civil Rights Museum. But in 1957, Dr. Lily Carroll Jackson, she won this award, the Ideal Mother Award. And legend has it that the Afro stopped this program because no one could compete after she. So I'm going to take a minute, and I want to read this article here on the right, just some excerpts from it. And it was published in June of 1957, and it's about the awards dinner that happened after that, that honored Lily Carroll Jackson. And it was written by Betty M. Phillips. And it reads, the Afro-Ideal Mother gives credit to the church. Whatever my children are, and whatever my husband and I have been able to contribute through our lives to the progress of our people has been due to the influence of the Christian church upon us. Early, we taught our children to serve without exception of reward in the school, in the church, and in the community. The Afro's 1957 ideal mother, Mrs. Lily M. Jackson, 68-year-old Baltimore mother of 4, was speaking to 300 guests gathered in the Morgan State College refectory on Friday evening. The occasion was a banquet given in her honor by the Afro-American Company and featured special awards to honorable mention winners in the Ideal Mother contest. In her moving talk, Mrs. Jackson said, "We have regarded our children as our most precious possessions and as a trust from God, for whose development he would have hold us responsible. We have tried to stay true to this trust. Dr. Carl Murphy, president of the Afro-American Company, presided at the awards banquet. He described Mrs. Jackson as a valiant woman who does not eat the bread of idleness, whose lamp does not go out in the night, who opens her hands to the poor and reaches out to the needy, and as a little David who is not awed by the size of her opposition. And as the successful president of the Baltimore NAACP for 22 years at that time, and a nationally known civic leader for unpopular causes who achieves because she believes God's storehouse is full. Dr. Murphy presented the honoree with a gold-plated perceptual motion clock, which, with hope through long life God may grant you, it will remind you of our respect and affection. That's just a little snippet of that article that was written in the Afro-American newspaper. She was an amazing woman, and I can't wait to talk more about her. But before we dig into all of her accomplishments and things like that, Lisa, can you tell us about your great-grandmother and what an amazing woman that she was, and let us know about her roots, where she was born, what was her upbringing?
So thank you for this opportunity to remember just this great, great, remarkable woman. Happens to be my great-grandmother, but she was just remarkable. I was a little girl. I was born in 1963, so I do remember her. I remember her not being typical, even though when I was born, she was mainly retired. I just looked at all these plaques and pictures and people who were coming through her home with the museum. It's a museum now. It wasn't a museum then. And us kids used to play up and down the back steps. I remember as the adults were talking. But great grandma Jackson used to say, I'm the descendant of an African chief. I remember her saying that. She said, you know, my people were born free. Her ancestor, we trace it back to the 1810 census. Cyrus Bowen came to America, came to Maryland as a free man. He realized that if he were married to a white woman, his children would be free. There is still land in Sandy Springs, Maryland, that is in the family name. And there's not a church is there, but also a graveyard. But grandma talked about that. And that's on her mother's side, Amanda Bowen. On her father's side, Charles Carroll of Carrollton, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Her father was born in the Dorrigan Manor. He was raised, I should say, in the Dorrigan Manor. And great-great-grandpa Carroll was blonde hair and blue eyes. So we, do the math, okay? He was taught to read and write. And so her earliest understanding was that education was the key to everything. She saw her mother as an educated woman, her father, they were of humble means, but they absolutely believed in education. Something also really important to note that when she was a little girl, 3 of her siblings died. She was born in Sandy Springs, they were in Sandy Springs, but when they moved to Baltimore for greater opportunity, very segregated at that time, Blacks had to live in certain sections. In the section where they lived, no indoor plumbing, horrible conditions, just for the education. And my great-grandmother lost 3 of her siblings in 1 week. I won't get into a lot of details. Can you imagine a mother, my great-grandmother's mother, having to bury 3 siblings because of typhoid disease? And their graves are still there, the benchmarks. But it's just, that's the kind of environment that she grew up in, loving family, but absolutely of their time, with an understanding that you are not a first-class citizen.
Wow, no, I had no idea about her siblings. Her lineage and connecting to like African royalty, as well as the Charles Carrolls of Carrollton County. How do you think that unique background really influenced her in her work?
She really was a deeply religious and faithful woman who believed that she was sent here on a mission. She said, and I'll say this, is we were integrated in the sheets, we were not integrated in the streets. And I'm saying that because this is a person who didn't drink, smoke. I mean, you're talking about church and family and community. But that's the very plainness of it that, she understood. She said, we're all God's children. White men, Black men, we are all brothers. And it was her mission to ensure that everybody got first-class citizenship. So her parents, I think, because the times were so tough, And because of the neighborhood that they grew up in, Old West Baltimore, seeing the Brotherhood of Liberty, seeing, other organizations that were Black organizations that were educated, that were dignified, she had a sense of real personhood. In a sense, and her parents were pretty independent. They had in their home, they boarded rooms for people who wanted to come, and they had a little sweet shop downstairs in their brownstone, well, in their row home. So she got to see independence, entrepreneurship, family working together. So she really grew up with a sense of freedom, I should say.
I want to jump in for a second because you mentioned Sandy Spring, Maryland, which is actually a connection for the Murphy family also. And so I don't know if you've traced this at all. I certainly haven't yet, but I would be so interested to know if they knew each other then before coming to Baltimore, because the backstory for the founding of the Afro is actually that, our family had been enslaved in Montgomery County near Sandy Spring and ended up owning the land that they were enslaved on. And when my great-great-great-grandfather died, he left that land equally to his children. His daughter, Martha, sold her portion to her brother in order to finance the Afro. So there's a very direct connection to that part of Maryland and the kind of like, I guess, entrepreneurship and long legacies that are in Baltimore. So I'm so interested to learn more about that with you. So we're going to have to connect on that one for sure, because they might have been connected before they even got to Baltimore, which would explain also so much of like the camaraderie and trust within those relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Dr. Murphy and Carl Murphy and Lily Jackson were schoolmates. So they knew each other. He actually was in her sister Marion's class, but grandma skipped a grade or something. So she ended up in their class, but they had known each other all their lives pretty much.
Wow. Thank you for bringing up that point about Sandy Spring and the connection between the families, because I also noticed a lot of those connections as well. One thing, Savannah, working at Afro Charities, you say a lot, and you said before, is how Martha Murphy, John H. Murphy's wife, how she donated that $200 from to start to purchase the Afro, but also how she birthed that workforce of the Afro-American newspaper. And the paper continues to be family run and owned to this day. And the same thing, if you think about Lily Carroll Jackson, she birthed civil rights leaders, leaders that, changed the landscape of Baltimore. And also there's cases and things that they did helped move forward our people throughout the country. Lisa, Dr. Barnes, can you talk a little bit about her love story, about how she became a mother? A lot of people might not know her love story with Kiefer.
Yeah. Well, I would say great-grandpa Kiefer Jackson was a traveling filmmaker and shower of films. He came to stay at her mom's boarding house, her family's boarding house. She was singing in the church choir at Sharp Street, United Memorial Methodist Church, the family church. He saw her singing. He said it was love at first sight or first hearing. She just had an absolutely beautiful, beautiful voice. They met, and there was a little bit of trepidation, honestly, because he looked white. Her parents were not thrilled about the possibility of that. And he was a traveling person. And to be honest with you, they thought he would take her down south and maybe put her back into some sort of slavery. That's just the way, because they didn't know him. He was from Mississippi, from Carrollton, Mississippi, and he said he was from somewhere else. And they found out he was from Carrollton. So didn't go. But my great-grandmother, Lily Jackson, was in love with him. They ended up getting married. She took up half of the business. He traveled throughout the South showing religious films, mainly in churches, because audience were segregated at that time. And there weren't a lot of uplifting films about Black people. So they showed a lot of religious films. Something else he would do was he would come into the town and actually film the people of the town. And by the time they got to the showing, he would say, "Come see yourself on film. Come see yourself at the theater." If there was a theater, if it was a movie house, and he did that. And some of his camera equipment is on display at the Lily Carroll Jackson Museum. But they fell in love. They got married, and honestly, it wasn't great in terms of the family. Her parents didn't support that marriage early on. They were very skeptical. They traveled throughout the South for quite a few years. Had 3 of their children, Aunt Virginia, Grandma Juanita, and Aunt Marion, they had them on the road. And can you imagine traveling throughout the South, 3 children in the early 1900s, and you're showing films? She was the person that opened the show. On stage, she would sing and entertain. And my grandmother Juanita was actually Juanita the Great. She would do like a mental telepathy act that they had. So they did that for a few years. And my great grandmother would say, it was a love story. There's no me without him. So lovingly, of Kiefer Jackson. And he knew, because he had seen lynchings early on as a child, because he looked white. He waded through the crowd and actually saw people he knew lynched for nothing. There was a postmistress who my grandmother Juanita said she was lynched because she was a nigger woman who had too much. And when my great grandfather Kiefer left Carrollton, Mississippi, he never returned, not for his mother's funeral. He said, I'll never go back to that place. He said, I will support my wife as she got in the movement. He said, because you do a great job out front, I will be the support. And that's what she said. There's no me without him.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah.
Do you know if any of those films survive that he made?
Well, the ones from the early part, no, but we do have films from the early part of the 1900s with Mary McLeod Bethune coming to Druid Hill, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt coming in the early 40s. We've got some of the films that are digital, yes, and quite willing to share and to collaborate, because the Afro Charities, your archive is just gold. I mean,
I would love to see those. That sounds amazing.
We'll get together and share
And
those.
then you can come to the museum and see some of those artifacts, the camera. You can see Lily Carroll in that graduation dress, and even just some of the memorabilia for when they traveled.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. One other thing to note about, I wrote down another connection again, and you said see yourself on the screen, and I'm like, and also you can see yourself in the Afro newspaper. Like it's so many connections here. I love it. And so another thing that I wanted to discuss that a lot of people may not know about, but we often see Lily Carroll Jackson. She poses, from the side. Can you talk a little bit about why that is? And what happened around this earlier time period before she got into civil rights?
So she's in her late 20s. They had moved back to Baltimore. The family, she decided, she and my great grandfather, to move back. So the children were school age, and it was better to have them in school and grounded and founded. So they came back to Baltimore. He continued on the road for a while. She became very ill and actually had an infection in her face. And she went to be seen once, and it got worse. It didn't get better. And to be quite frank, Jim Crow medical treatment. Okay, that's really what we're talking about here. The infection got so bad, she went to Johns Hopkins. They performed a surgery on her, and when they told her that there was so much infection that they didn't know what it was, could have been experimental surgery. And she was in the colored ward at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and we got the little thing of the line in the book of her when her surgery happened, and the doctor that performed the surgery. But they had to remove a lot of bone. She had an infection in her mastoid part of her face, and they accidentally cut the mastoid nerve instead of bone. And it literally took all of her face looked like she'd had a stroke. When she was recovering, actually before the surgery, and the Afro covered it so well, she was quoted as saying, I told God, if you would preserve my life so that I could rear my children, I will be yours in service forever. She kept her word. They actually thought she was dead after the surgery, and the Afro documented that they had her body with the dead bodies, and she moved. The sheet moved, and they brought her up, but she was in the colored wing, and the doctor said it was a miracle that she survived. And from that point on, she dedicated her life. She was like 28 years old, and people thought she had to teach herself how to speak again, how to do everything because of the face. And so she was 28. Can you imagine your face looking like that? So I love the portraits of her when she is, the other way that you don't see it, because she did have, you're a young woman, you still have part of your beauty and some self-esteem, but but somebody said, how did that affect your marriage? And she said, well, we did have our baby, our 4th child after that. So my husband and I continued a wonderful marriage.
I know that's right.
That's it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm going to have to go back into the Afro archives over on ProQuest to that library and check that out. If you don't know, you can access the Afro archives right now. You can just go on ProQuest with the e-card, and you can check out the Afro's archives and look through those old papers from 1893 up to the present. There are some things missing, but it's most of it's really there.
The Pratt Library provides free access.
Yes,
with
free
e-card.
I've been doing that for about a decade or more, since about the 2000s. It's been fantastic. I've learned so much about the Murphy family as well.
Once we start telling people that, we just start hearing about these rabbit holes. So just be prepared to go on down a rabbit hole for, I don't even know how long. Clear out the time. There's a lot to go through. It's almost going back all the way to 1892. I think it starts in 1893. So there's a lot to wade through that you can access for free.
Yeah. Lisa, you brought up her children. And I've talked a little bit about how they were civil rights activists. I want to touch a little bit on them before we really cover the breadth of Dr. Jackson's work. Virginia was an artist, and she was rejected from MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art, because of segregation and the color of her skin. Juanita, she was also rejected from the University of Maryland. She had to be a lawyer, so she had to go to school elsewhere. But they both eventually, became involved in organizing, but still were able to pursue her passion. Virginia with art, and then Juanita with the law. How did those moments help push Dr. Lilly into the movement? And how is this, Savannah? Maybe how is this story similar to the descendants of the Afro? I'll let you go first, Lisa.
Just that my great-grandmother, Lily Carroll Jackson, understood, she believed in young people. Most movements around the world, it's young people. Older people, we got far too much invested. We don't sacrifice the same. And so young people, her daughters, Virginia and Juanita, had founded the citywide Young People's Forum. And you can find out a little more information about it now. You can find out some more in the museum. But they came back as college graduates to Baltimore. Nothing to do, no jobs. And so they formed this organization that became just a seminal organization for the country. They held weekly meetings. This is in the 30s, like 1930, they might be off 33, I think it was. They founded the organization, and it helped launch them as young leaders. My grandmother, Juanita, became the president of the organization. And what my grandmother, Lily, did was they supported. She raised money. Loan them money, I should say, to keep them going every year. And they pay her back through fundraisers. But they had everybody from Nannie Helen Burroughs to W.E.B. Du Bois to Mary McLeod Bethune. Every week, these speakers would come speak to audiences of 300 to 500, first at Sharp Street Memorial, then at Bethel, AME Church, right in the community. And they would talk about how to organize politically. How do you become a citizen? They were some of the first protesters in terms of anti-lynching. These young people were. There are pictures in the museum of them wearing nooses, around their necks. So they were energized early. She supported them. And then it was Dr. Carl Murphy and a number of ministers came and asked Lily Carroll Jackson, would you revive the Baltimore branch? We want to do a reorganization of the Baltimore branch. They had a Baltimore branch, and it had become dormant because it's a volunteer organization. They asked her because she was already involved as the trustee of her church. She became the first female chair of the trustee board at Sharp Street Memorial, and she was a very good steward with money. She was also an entrepreneur, she and her husband, and they realized she's somebody who could actually be the face and the leader of an organization like this, the representative. But that was Dr. Carl Murphy, who really had that vision. He was a behind the scenes, she would say, general, because he just really was. And becoming the matriarch of the family and the organizing with the organization, then her other children got involved. Her soon-to-be daughter, son-in-law, Clarence Mitchell Jr., who's my grandfather, married Juanita. He also, the two of them, just as power couple, his younger brother, Perrin Mitchell, becomes the first Black congressman. That's way down the road, and desegregating the University of Maryland School of Social Work. My father, Clarence Mitchell III, grandson, becomes one of the earliest elected state officials in the country in 1962. So she had a significant impact in her family, but that's just her family. That's not the other people who were organizing in the NAACP who went on to become these fabulous lawyers. It's just a laundry list, too much to even cover today.
Savannah, how is this this similar, the stories of Virginia and Juanita, similar to the Afros?
I'm taking notes on all of this. I can't wait to have more conversation later. So it was interesting what you were talking about. They had to go out of state to pursue their studies, because that is a story that exists within the Afro family as well. So my grandmother, who wanted to study journalism to join the family business, could not attend a state school either. And so she was sent to the University of Wisconsin to complete her studies with her sister. And I believe it was her sister who might have even written that article that we led off with. I believe it was Betty, who was the one who was at Wisconsin with her. And we have this incredible image, and it's just a sea of women's faces. And then there's just these two Black women in the middle. It's the two sisters. And for whatever reason, my grandmother felt the need to circle them, but we knew who they were. We knew they were it's obvious. They were standing out of the crowd. Wow. And so there's this really interesting legacy in Maryland where because they wouldn't accept these students, the state actually ended up having to pay to send them to go to college elsewhere, which just shows how, I don't know, just silly, honestly. Racial segregation was, and how it just all it does is serve to take money out of the pockets of the people who like we can all just go to school. And then you have to pay extra for me to go somewhere else. I might actually be paying you, you know?
Exactly.
So it's just it's interesting to hear that story reflected in your family as well. But one of the things I also noted was just thinking about Dr. Carl Murphy, who was the second publisher of the Afro, as the general behind the scenes, because it's true. And we see in the archives all the time, just his letters, his notes, his receipts saying, I donated X amount and don't forget to pay me back this loan.
Right.
But there was also a letter that Dion uncovered. So these doors that she just pulled up on the screen, on one pane of glass, it says, offices NAACP second floor. And on the other pane of glass, it says the Afro 8:30 to 5 p.m. daily, which shows that these two organizations were working so closely together that they even shared space at one point. And so he was the chair of the Legal Redress Committee. And so he was making some of the decisions with the committee about what cases the NAACP would take on ultimately. But what I find to be so interesting also in the research that Dion was doing about the provenance of these doors, she found a letter from the national chapter of the NAACP asking Dr. Carl Murphy to take on, you know, leadership of the Baltimore branch. And what he does instead is nominate your great grandmother for that role and say, you know, I have somebody else who actually would be better at this, and my health won't allow it, and I'm running a business in this X, Y, and Z. But she would go on to run that organization for 35 years.
Right.
And like, what an amazing legacy.
I have to say, he was not a man of his time. You're talking about at that time to support female leadership, to support this woman in this role. And I mean, the respect that she had for him, I could feel it. I could hear her words when she talked about him, just so respectfully. It elevated all of us to be able to see us as human beings. You know, he saw a leader, he saw someone who could gather, and she saw a partner and someone who she could look to and who could really, he couldn't do everything. But I have to also say, it's that financial independence, because they were both entrepreneurs. They were able to do and be free politically. And I see this now in our community. There's a big push, and I'm so glad that there is, for young people to start their own businesses and to support our own organizations, because in the political times that we had then, and we look at where we are now, the freest people that we have are entrepreneurs.
And I would say, you know, like the legacy, the upbringing has so much to do with his mindset. So, you know, I shared that story earlier about his mother being the angel investor for the Afro. So he knows what women can do. You know, he knows the organizing power of women. He knows the financial capacity of women. He knows what they can pull off, you know, and she ran the YWCA as its president for 18 years. So he's seen it firsthand, and then ended up having 5 daughters of his own. His wife was co-founder of Delta Sigma Theta, you know, so it's like he has seen what could happen. And so he was a man that was ahead of his time in many ways. And I think that legacy is really important to highlight, but it also has so much to do with who their parents were and how they raised them and what they saw firsthand. And Black women have always been working. Always been leading.
You know, my great-grandmother, when my grandmother was in law school, Juanita was in law school, there were not many. She was one of a couple of Black women who at the University of Maryland School of Law. And before she finished, my great-grandmother literally took her across the street to Druid Hill Avenue, the office that's now going to become the Juanita Jackson Mitchell Law Center, and said, "That's your office." And she said, "Mama, I haven't passed the bar yet." She said, "Oh, but you will." And
That's
going to be a place for the NAACP, another arm of the NAACP. So it's not just yours to practice law. I'm getting that as an investment for our future. And it became that. And now it's the other reiteration is it's now going to become the Juanita Jackson Mitchell Law Center because of Reverend Alvin Hathaway and his organization. And it's going to be a law clinic. So amazing.
Yes, amazing. Thank you both for sharing so many nuggets. When we're talking about Lily Carroll Jackson and her relationship with the Afro, as well as with other organizations. But I want to, just before we go, I can't let us go without talking about the Afro just a little bit more. I want to talk a little bit about like what we can learn from these types of collaborations between civil rights leaders and Black-owned newspapers. The Black press has been around for quite some time, even before the Afro. But the Afro is the longest continuously operating family-owned newspaper in the country. But what can we learn, Savannah, Dr. Barnes, even Lisa, what can we learn from these collaborations between civil rights leaders and the Black press? It's happening even right now.
I want to hear from Dr. Barnes.
Well, I think we can learn that it takes all of us working together, that we can't just do it by ourselves. And it takes, getting that Black perspective to Black people, because the news is often twisted and depending on what source you're using. And so we really need to look to a source that is looking out for our interests and use that source as, our guide. And when Lily Carroll Jackson and Carl Murphy were working together, they were making sure people knew what was going on in their communities, how they could advance, what they could do, how they could be safe. There were so many issues going on. Safety was a major issue. And you needed that press. You knew you could trust that source. And we even Clarence Mitchell started out at the Afro. There's so many connections between the Afro. And his story about the 1933 lynching of George Armwood was so instrumental that galvanized Lily Carroll Jackson and even her allies, Margaret Carey and so many others, and Juanita, to really dig in deep into the trenches, into this work. So, social justice, and then even that experience changed Clarence. And I'm sure Lisa can tell us a little bit more how it changed him, seeing what he saw and experiencing that. And he originally was going to be involved or try to
be a doctor,
the medical field, be a doctor. But after witnessing that lynching, and not witnessing it, the actual lynching, but how what had occurred, because he and the photographer, the Afro photographer,
several of them,
came and witnessed it and took the images that we now see today and that are featured in the museum. That experience really changed them. And it was certainly, they risked their life traveling down into an area where there's mob violence. But they knew it was important to tell that story.
They told them at that time, if you come down here to cover this, we'll kill you. And Dr. Murphy asked Grandpop, and there were a few Afro reporters that went down there. They wrote a series of articles but my grandfather, who was 23 at the time, Lincoln grad, Greek and Latin scholar, and came down, had to have a job, during the Depression. That was a job that he was able to get. He later got FEPC through Mary McLeod Bethune, but not right away. But said when we went down there and the body of George Armwood, who's another 23-year-old, he was 22 or 23, still smoldering. They had dragged him from the jail. They had hung him. He was dead before they even hung him, burned his body, and took bits of his body and left him smoldering on a trash heap. So my grandfather, 23, is going to go down. The body was still smoldering. So you can imagine the smell. Throngs of people in the street, crowds, and they go down there. These brave reporters, journalists go down there and cover this and do a series of articles of just how ugly. And the people down there said, it wasn't us. It was the Virginia crowd that did this. They were ashamed but it was that kind of environment that they were living in. It could have happened to any of them. And my grandfather Clarence, as well as grandmother Juanita, great grandma Jackson, testified on the Costigan-Wagner anti-lynching legislation at that time. Went to Annapolis, had white allies. Margaret Carey, who we talk about in the museum, she also went, who's a Baltimorean, went to testify to support this anti-lynching legislation because it was real. You know, in Baltimore, we think of Maryland as this place. Maryland, they said, was a mean state. It was mean. Grandma said you never knew what kind of ugliness was going to be put on you just walking, you know, out of your home. We talk about police violence, and 10 years after Freddie Gray, you know, was killed while in police custody. And again, it's the coverage. You know, the Afro was covering the in custody death of Freddie Gray, and that's how we know what happened now. The Afro was covering the murder of George Armwood, and that's how we know what happened today. So that partnership has always been. It's community that can talk about what is happening in a community, not some of these outside interests who don't even know who our communities are.
Yes.
One of the things that always sticks out to me about that series of coverage is the way that they actually went to George Armwood's family and talked with them specifically. And so it's the and talked with them with sensitivity and covered it with sensitivity, but also really showing, I mean, you didn't really have to show this for Black people, but the human element in all of this. So and then for us at Afro Charities, we're then caring for those materials now. So we're holding the record of what happened now and making sure that it can't be erased. Even though the federal government might want it to get erased, we will have the record of what actually happened because the Afro covered it and because we're caring for those materials. So it becomes full circle at that point also, where the collections are then available to people who are organizing today to look at what happened and to look at how people were strategizing, how they were organizing. We have materials in the collections that are behind the scenes materials. So what's the best route to get to the monument if you're going to be there for this protest? Where are the bus routes coming from? Those kinds of documents are also in the collection because this paper was reporting from within the community.
Yes.
I have to also shout out to Morgan State University. You know, they happen to be, they are the repository, and Dr. Barnes and the team, and Khadijah Hart, program director who's behind the scenes today, of making sure that the museum got renovated, restored, and that is living history. My great grandmother said she willed that her home become a civil rights museum, and the family undertook it initially, but it was a lot for a family. But you remember that Morgan connection with Afro, even for the Mother of the Year story, it was held on campus of Morgan State University. And that's why this collaboration is so important with Morgan State, because Grandma Jackson loved them, and she understood what the importance of our HBCUs. And so that relationship is still happening today. But she said, tell them what we did. Tell them how we fought for civil rights. Make my home a civil rights museum. So this is what she wanted, was for the history to be living, like your ancestors did in terms of what you're doing, Savannah, for the Afro Archives.
Beautiful. Thank you. You brought us up to our next point of what we want to cover. Time is moving by so fast, and I do want to make sure that we have time for any audience questions as well. If we don't, I can always come back to some of the ones that I have. But you led us right up to talking about the legacy of Dr. Jackson, as well as about the museum. Dr. Barnes, can you tell us about the museum? We know it's her former home, but how did it become that and it become into the hands of Morgan State?
Well, so as Lisa mentioned, the family operated initially, and this home was built about 1868. So you can imagine by the time Morgan acquired it, it's 1996. So it's it's in quite a bit of disrepair, and it takes a lot of money. And so it was transferred over to Morgan, who led a beautiful restoration of it. You'll see original flooring and chandeliers, and just really brought this home back to life. But you have a little bit of the period piece of 1868 and when she lived there, 1953 on up to about 78. The museum opened initially by the family, Jackson Mitchell family, led by Virginia, in 1978. And so all the, Mr. Tanabe, who is the director of the Office of Museums, getting the funding for it and working towards that, and then all of the restoration work. It took about 20 years for it to reopen in 2016. So you're going to see modernization and you're going to see preservation. And so we invite you to come on over. We've got programming. We've got a program coming up with a Carl Murphy descendant on June 21st at 4 p.m. Dr. Frances Murphy Draper with her book. It's our new book club that we've been running for a few months. And Lisa, who is a descendant, of course, is leads that as our moderator. But Dr. Murphy's book, we want you to start reading it now. Prayer and Pen: The Prayers and Legacy of Paul Murphy. So here we go, another collaboration. And when you come to the museum, you know, there was a huge partnership with the Afro. A lot of the images come from the Afro, and many of the stories are informed from Afro articles. So, well, I think we'll forever be connected. So come on over and see what we have. And thank you.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about, you know, preserving history. This is what we're doing. One of the things that we're doing right now, but especially Black history is so important, especially with everything that's happening right now. It now matters more than ever. There's always been an attack on the archives about information in Black history. How have your institutions been affected by any of this censorship, shall we say, or disinvestment of funds? How are you combating that? If you could speak a little bit about that, we'd like to know more.
Did you say how are museums?
How are museums or your institution, if they've been affected, or what have you heard about?
Absolutely. When federal funding was cut, that means we lose positions, we lose opportunities for interns to learn about the museum field or to help with the museum. So, you know, it's museums all across the country and libraries are losing funding. These are the places that store this history and are the truth tellers. America has a very complex history. It's not one-sided. And so all of these institutions from various perspectives tell the American story. And so when they lose funding or their stories are being suppressed or websites are being removed, that's trying to censor this history. But we need to tell the full history of America's story. And that's what these places are. And so it's important to support these smaller institutions that have this history. Yes, the national museums have some of the history, but when you come to the local sites, they have more of the local history and they fill in the gaps with more details, because Baltimore's leadership is not as well known as it should be. So you come here to learn about that. You might not know about that in Memphis or in DC, but it might be a snippet, but you come here to get the full story. So places like this and the funding for these places are very important. So we invite you to donate to the museum and to Afro Charities, which hold those documents that continue to inform such museums. It's very vital that you support each person or other organizations because of that loss of federal funding.
Savannah, were you going to say something? I saw you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I just want to piggyback on what you just said, which is with these donations, I think sustaining donations are really important as well. And so I've seen a really amazing campaign coming out of New Orleans from the Black School. And it's a very simple concept. It's just make at least a $10 monthly donation. And that's $120 a year. You probably spend much more on other things that are less important. And so if you can, you know, look at your budget and figure out 3-5 organizations that you might be able to support at $5 a month every month, but just to make sure that they have some consistency, that's a starting place that anybody can work with. If you have means beyond that, go beyond that, you know, but really think about the places that matter to you, that are holding your history up, that are holding a mirror to you, that are making you feel empowered, that help you understand who you are in the world, that help connect the dots of why we're in the situation we're in right now. There are so many really impactful small organizations that need your support. And so I'll just put that out there. And so we have links popping up here and there that have our donation links, and please follow them. For Afro Charities in particular, we started doing this work of stewarding the Afro archives not long ago. So we were founded in 1963, but we just started doing this particular work in 2019. So our game plan was to be able to access federal funding, competitive federal funding for supporting our staff and growing our staff once we move into our new site, because that used to be really solid funding sources for us. And so now we were planning to have that kind of funding coming in right about now. So now we're back to the drawing boards.
Yeah.
How are we going to make up the difference so that we can open this building with the staffing that we need in order to serve these materials to the public? And so it creates a huge void where there used to be really incredible support for the humanities, for the arts, and for programs that help to interpret this history that's so critical to the public.
And just as Lily Carroll Jackson and Carl Murphy did in the past, they came together. The community came together. And that's what we needed to do to support Afro Charities, support Lily Carroll Jackson Museum and any other museum that you think portrays a history that you know is true. And so definitely come together. We'll get through this time. We've been through other bad times and worse times, but we will get through this, but we can't do it unless we do it together.
Right. And I think we're going to be, go ahead, Lisa, go ahead.
I just only wanted to add one thing, and that was also supporting, and Savannah said it, local organizations that are doing the work, whether it's registering people to vote, voter education, because elections have consequences. And so it's not, yes, we want to support candidates who are doing the right thing, but we also want to support organizations that get voters out, because they didn't have as many elected African-American officials then, but they got the 1957 Civil Rights Act, the 60, the 64, the 67 or 68. And so the fact that we can support these local organizations, and we know some of them, you know, that are doing the work of getting voters out. So I think that's really important, because they would, and they did.
Yeah. Savannah said, how are we going to make it the difference? And I was like, we're going to make it the difference by everybody who's watching this program right now, who's going to donate to Afro Charities and the Lily Carroll Jackson Museum and other organizations in your neck of the woods that are doing this important work. Before I turn it over to our amazing online audience with their questions, I got one final burning question that I want to ask, and that is, if Dr. Lily Carroll Jackson were alive today, what do you think she would be organizing around? And I'll just pose that to everyone.
I can say she would be organizing in particular around voting, around making sure that there's not more police violence. Those would be like two big ones, around entrepreneurship and this attack on our MBE programs federally and other places. Around first-class citizenship, I think she would be really upset in terms of this rounding up of people and sending them to other countries. That is a slippery slope, and we know what that who that's targeting. In terms of that. So I think she would definitely be doing that, and supporting young people who are in organizations. And I'll say it like Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, you know, like some of the chapters of the NAACP, because that is where we get our power from.
Yeah.
I think she would certainly have a lot to say about how the education department is being dismantled. Education was so important to her and her family, and to see it be dismantled so quickly, so easily, that would have her up in arms. And she would certainly do what she could to make sure that locally children were not suffering from loss of resources that we're soon going to see, and how that impacts on the local level, how that happens in lived experiences, and who loses from this dismantling.
Thank you. We have a question from LWCS Boston. I believe this question is directed towards Savannah and Afro Charities, but also Dr. Barnes, you could answer this as well. How much of your collection has been digitized?
We mentioned earlier that most of the Baltimore newspapers are available and searchable online. That's through a program called ProQuest. The Enoch Pratt Library in Maryland provides free access to that with a library card. Several other public libraries throughout the country do as well. So that's one really great way to access the collections initially. There were several other editions of the paper. And so if you're interested in accessing those from Richmond, DC, Philadelphia, or Newark, you can get in touch with Afro Charities team. Those are not digitized yet. About 20,000 or so of the images in the collection are digitized. That's of 3 million. So that's not a big number either when you think about it. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, but that's kind of generational work. This is going to take a long time to digitize, but in the meantime, we are building a space where people can come and access these materials in person. And if you reach out to Afro Charities team, you can email archives@afro.com or go to afrocharities.org and /archives and check it out there, how to get in touch. And we can help you find things that might not be digitized.
Thank you, Savannah.
Yes, a large portion of the collection was digitized to develop the museum. However, it wasn't really digitized to put it in a form for the public. But we do have a resource center behind the museum and workstations. And so it's one of our goals to get that up and running and have a full digitization effort to get everything up and even look at civil rights more broadly and invite the public to bring objects and photographs and from their experiences to increase the collection, and then they would be available through our resource center.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. We had Lisa had to step out. She had to leave. So we thank Lisa for her participation today. We do have one more question. I want to follow up with our live audience online. At Sheba_Maya says, thank you all for your passion for preserving and sharing our history. Fascinating and inspiring stories. How can we best contact you to see archival objects in person for research or collab? I'll throw it to Dr. Barnes first, and then Savannah, you can take it.
Well, certainly you can contact us at lcjmuseum@morgan.edu, email us, or give us a call at 443-885-5300, or come and visit us on one of our open days and chat with us, or just, like I said, call, make an appointment. Our open days are Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 11 to 3.
And for the Afro Charities team, we are currently housed at a Maryland State Archives facility that's an offsite location, so it's technically not open to the public. So in terms of in-person access, right now it's restricted to our project partners and funders. We can only have very small groups come in with us by invitation, but we are building a place where anybody can come that will be open next year. So we have to wait a little bit on that. But if you're interested in collaborating with our team, Dion, who's been leading this great discussion, is the Director of Programs and Partnerships. And you can reach her, again, by emailing archives@afro.com, and it will forward to our team. That's just the easiest one to remember. So archives@afro.com, and that message will get forwarded to our team.
Perfect. Thank you, Savannah.
Everybody, I got to make one more plug.
Okay.
Afro Charities is hosting its second ever fundraiser on June 7th, right here in Baltimore. And it's going to be a party. It's a party benefiting Afro Charities. We are raising funds to just take care of our operations, take care of our people. And so without the people, there is no access to the archives. So we're going to need you guys to show up. The party is in Baltimore at a restaurant called Chingale. You can purchase your ticket at afrocharities.org/events. Early bird tickets are there's just a few more days left for that discounted rate. So please come out and support.
Thank you. And Dr. Barnes, I know y'all got some stuff coming up too. What's popping over at the museum?
Oh, yes. As I mentioned before, we've got the book club that we want people to join. It's ever growing, and it's not just regular book club. You get to meet the authors. And so we have 1 month where you read, and then we come together and get to engage with the authors of the book. So that's our biggest thing running for the summer. We're working on an exhibition looking at the Civil Rights Act, which will open in the fall. So just come on over. We have periodic open houses and various other programming, but the book club is what we're running pretty heavily right now.
Amazing. I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. I assisted Dr. Draper actually with that book, Prayer and Pen with Carl Murphy. So I'm definitely have to come and check out that program. She's an amazing speaker. If everyone has not heard and met Dr. Draper, she is a legend, and I promise you need to meet her. She's an amazing, amazing CEO and publisher of the Afro newspaper. It's 12:59, y'all. This has been an amazing hour, a fantastic spring edition of our Rereading the News. I want to thank today's panelists, Savannah Wood, Dr. Iris Barnes, and Lisa Mitchell for your time and voices today. I've learned so much about Dr. Jackson, and as well as our online community has too. Please note this program is recorded and it will be available on the various platforms at a later time. Before we end the live stream, though, please screenshot us right now on the various ways that you can stay connected to us and help our organizations continue to do this important work. We need you. We can't do it without you. And so we need to help each other move this platform and preserve these archives and these stories together. I want to also say thank you again to our panelists and our online audiences who are watching us from different platforms, as well as the behind the scene people, Jay Jackson, Khadijah Hard, Amber Camber Wheeler. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support behind the scenes. We might not see you, but we know you are there. If you're a mother out there, happy early Mother's Day. And if your mother's still with you, hug her tight because Mother's Day is right around the corner. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope to see you all at our fundraiser on June 7th. All right, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.